What happens when the world's most beautiful faces begin to fade? Not just with time, but under the crushing weight of the spotlight. Welcome to Classic Hollywood, where we go beyond the glamour to uncover the truth behind the legends. If you love untold stories, subscribe now and hit that bell. This is one you won't forget. Number 9. Jean Tierney, broken by beauty. She had a face like porcelain, flawless, still, almost unreal. In Laura, Jean Tierney didn't just play a mysterious woman. She was the enigma. Her icy stare, cool demeanor, and sculpted elegance made her one of Hollywood's most unforgettable screen goddesses. But what the camera couldn't see was how quickly that porcelain would begin to crack. Behind the scenes, Joan was fighting a battle most fans never knew existed. In 1943, at the height of her fame, she gave birth to a daughter, born with severe mental disabilities. The cause? A chilling twist of fate. A fan, sick with rubella, had approached Jean during a wartime charity event while she was pregnant. The virus passed to her, and her life was never the same. That trauma marked the beginning of her unraveling. Depression set in like a storm. Not sadness. Real depression. Debilitating. Dangerous. She experienced delusions, terrifying mood swings, and suicidal episodes that forced her in and out of psychiatric hospitals. By the 1950s, Jean voluntarily committed herself to the Menninger Clinic, one of the most renowned mental health institutions at the time. There, she underwent what was then considered cutting-edge treatment, electroconvulsive therapy. But the procedures were nothing like today. High-voltage electrical shocks were delivered with little medical regulation or emotional support. These weren't just treatments, they were erasures of memory, of emotion, of expression. Jean later revealed in her memoir, Self-Portrait, that the therapy had wiped away more than just the pain. It stole her ability to connect. Her signature expressiveness, so vital to her screen presence, was diminished. Her once fluid, hypnotic face became stiff, blank. Not quite broken, but no longer whole. She tried to return to the spotlight. She wanted to work. She needed to prove that she was still Jean Tierney. But Hollywood didn't wait. Her glow, once magnetic, was dimmed. And in a town that feeds on perfection, dim wasn't enough. By the mid-1960s, Jean Tierney had faded almost entirely from public life. The woman once called the most beautiful enigma on film was now remembered less for how she aged, and more for how she fractured under a pressure no one could see. Her beauty didn't fade gently. It was torn apart by the very system that once worshipped it. Number 8. Hedy Lamarr, the face that fought back and lost. They called her the most beautiful woman in the world, and for a time, no one questioned it. Hedy Lamarr wasn't just a Hollywood star, she was a phenomenon. An exotic, almost otherworldly beauty, with a face so perfect, MGM practically turned it into a brand. But what happens when your face is your career, and time starts to take it away? By the 1960s, Hedy was in her 40s. In Hollywood, that might as well have been 80th. The scripts stopped coming. The close-ups got tighter. Then they stopped altogether. And so, Hedy fought back. Desperate to maintain the look that had made her a legend, she turned to cosmetic procedures, at a time when plastic surgery was still in its dark, experimental phase. No FDA regulations, no proven safety, no second chances. She became obsessed with keeping time off her face. She tried collagen injections, harsh chemical peels, even a then popular but highly dangerous practice, injecting liquid silicone directly into her cheeks and lips. It was a gamble, and she lost. The silicone began to harden beneath her skin. It shifted, migrated, leaving visible lumps and distortions. Her once expressive face stiffened. Her smile became uneven. Her jawline lost definition. Directors couldn't light her properly. Photographers had to edit around her features, but worst of all, Hedy could no longer recognize the woman in the mirror. By the 1970s, she had become a recluse, living alone, refusing interviews unless they were over the phone. She didn't want to be seen, not by the world that had once adored her, not by the press who now only printed side-by-side comparisons. Then versus now. In a cruel twist, the beauty that had once opened every door for her had become a prison. And when it faded, even slightly, Hollywood let the door slam shut. She spent her final years in near isolation, arrested twice for shoplifting, estranged from most of her children. Still remembered for her face, but never forgiven for letting it change. And yet, she was more than a face. She was an inventor, a genius who co-created technology that would become the foundation for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. But Hollywood didn't care about brilliance. It wanted flawlessness, and when that was gone, so was she. Number 7. Frances Farmer. From Paramount to Paranoia. She was brilliant, striking, intense. Frances Farmer wasn't just another Hollywood beauty. She was different. She had presence. That rare blend of brains and smolder that made directors take notice and audiences lean forward. But Frances didn't play by Hollywood's rules, and Hollywood never forgave her for it. In the late 1930s, Frances was on the fast track to superstardom. With her high cheekbones, bold voice, and no-nonsense attitude, she stood out from the typical studio-controlled starlet. But that very defiance, refusing publicity stunts, challenging producers, pushing back against contracts, put her on a collision course with a system that crushed anything it couldn't control. Then came the diagnosis: paranoid schizophrenia. The timing, suspicious. The treatment, brutal. Frances was institutionalized multiple times throughout the 1940s, most infamously at Western State Hospital in Washington. What happened inside those walls wasn't therapy, it was torture. She was subjected to ice baths, solitary confinement, physical restraints, and electroshock therapy without anesthesia. She was beaten, silenced, forgotten. Her mind and her beauty were slowly dismantled by the very places that claimed they were trying to save her. Some rumors say she was lobotomized. Others say that part's just myth. But one thing is undeniable: when she came out, she wasn't the same. Her once radiant face was hollow, her eyes shadowed, her movements stiff and mechanical. By the time she returned to television in the late 1950s, viewers were stunned. Gone was the fiery rebel who lit up the screen and come and get it. In her place was a woman haunted by trauma, by silence, by the echo of a spotlight that had long since moved on. In her devastating autobiography, Will There Really Be a Morning?, Frances hinted at horrors she couldn't even fully put into words. Her beauty didn't fade. It was taken, piece by piece, by an industry and an institution that saw her not as a woman, but a problem to be fixed. She died in 1970. No final film, no Hollywood comeback, just a whisper, a cautionary tale. Number 6. Gloria Graham. The lip that couldn't lie. Gloria Graham had the kind of face that lingered. A sultry voice, bedroom eyes, that breathy, teasing lisp that made her irresistible in the smoky shadows of film noir. She was magnetic, dangerous, and for a while, unstoppable. In 1952, she won an Oscar for The Bad and the Beautiful. But Gloria didn't just play femme fatale. She lived the Hollywood fantasy, and like so many others, she paid for it. With her face. Gloria had a secret. She hated her upper lip, thought it was too thin, too plain. And in the late 1940s, long before plastic surgery had safety standards, she took matters into her own hands. Literally. She began injecting paraffin wax into her own lip. Not at a clinic, not with a doctor. On her own, in secret. And it worked. For a moment, until it didn't. The wax hardened beneath her skin. It migrated. It left lumps that couldn't be hidden by makeup or lighting. Directors were forced to shoot her from odd angles. Close-ups became a problem. Casting offers slowed, then stopped. And behind the scenes, Gloria unraveled. She grew obsessed with her appearance, checking mirrors constantly, reapplying lipstick until it became ritual. Her confidence, once effortless, now depended on avoiding reflections and hiding from harsh lights. In Peter Turner's memoir, Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool, he recalled how deeply self-conscious she became, how she would shy away from cameras, how she never stopped worrying about how she looked. By the 1960s, Gloria Graham, the woman once called the Queen of Film Noir, was out of the spotlight. She retreated to theater, then to England. And when she died of cancer in 1981 at just 57, her once iconic face was barely recognizable. Her beauty didn't simply fade, it was distorted by a desperate attempt to preserve it. In a town obsessed with youth, Gloria tried to freeze time. Instead, she froze herself in a cycle of insecurity, secrecy, and silence. Number 5. Barbara Payton, stardom to Skid Row. She had it, the curves, the smile, the danger. Barbara Payton was a walking contradiction, part innocent allure, part raw, unapologetic fire. Discovered in the late 1940s, she was on the fast track to Hollywood stardom. She starred opposite legends like James Cagney and Gary Cooper, and for a moment, she looked like the next Lana Turner. But Barbara didn't just live fast, she crashed hard, and the fall was brutal. Her personal life became a tabloid feeding frenzy. Affairs, fights, a love triangle so volatile it ended in public assault and a ruined reputation. Hollywood loves scandal until it costs money. And just like that, the roles dried up. Desperate and adrift, Barbara spiraled into alcoholism, into addiction, and eventually into the streets. By the mid-1950s, the same woman who once graced glamorous movie posters was living in cheap motels, prostituting herself for as little as $5 a night. The police mugshots from that era tell the story no film ever could. A face bloated and bruised, a look of dazed regret, a woman who once stood in the spotlight, now surviving in the shadows. And yet, in 1963, she wrote a memoir, I Am Not Ashamed. Dictated from a Skid Row apartment, it was raw, painful, and honest. She described looking in the mirror and seeing someone she didn't recognize. Someone Hollywood didn't want to know anymore. Just a year later, Barbara Payton died of heart and liver failure, her body worn out at just 39 years old. Once called the blonde bombshell, she ended as a Hollywood ghost, a cautionary tale no one dared tell out loud. Her beauty didn't fade with time, it was consumed by the very machine that built her up. And when it was done using her, it left her behind. Number 4. Veronica Lake, from peekaboo starlet to public indifference. In the 1940s, she was an icon, the definition of wartime glamour. That long blonde wave falling over one eye? Instantly legendary. Veronica Lake didn't just star in noir classics like This Gun for Hire and The Blue Dahlia. She defined them. She was mysterious, alluring, untouchable. But that signature look, it became a prison. By the early 1950s, the shine was fading. Studios grew frustrated with her reputation. Difficult, erratic, troubled. Paramount ended her contract in 1948. Just like that, the studio that built her let her go. Behind the scenes, Veronica was drinking heavily. Her marriage was falling apart. She suffered mental health breakdowns. Some say she was later diagnosed with schizophrenia, though she denied it and refused treatment. The glamorous starlet with the golden wave was unraveling. Then, in 1959, came the article that stunned America. The New York Post reported that Veronica Lake, once the darling of a generation, was working as a cocktail waitress at the Martha Washington Hotel in Manhattan. The public was shocked. The once camera-perfect face, now bloated. Her hair, unstyled. Her expression, tired, haunted. Photos taken in her final years showed a woman you'd pass on the street and never recognize. Heavy jowls, thinning hair, deeply shadowed eyes. A far cry from the Hollywood poster girl she once was. In her memoir, Veronica, the autobiography of Veronica Lake, she wrote, "There are worse things than being forgotten. Being remembered badly is one of them." By the time she died in 1973 from hepatitis and kidney failure, she weighed just over 90 pounds. Her ashes were scattered at sea by a stranger. No fanfare, no final photo, no spotlight. The face that launched 1,000 haircuts was gone. Quietly, invisibly, just as the world had forgotten her. Number 3. Linda Darnell, burned alive in her final role. She was called the girl with the perfect face. Smooth skin, piercing eyes, a gaze that held secrets. In the 1940s, Linda Darnell was Hollywood royalty, starring in films like Forever Amber and A Letter to Three Wives. But beauty in Hollywood is a timer ticking in reverse. By the late 50s, Linda's star had dimmed, divorced, typecast, overlooked. She started drinking, she aged out of ingenue roles. But there were no parts waiting for aging beauties, not then. In one interview, she said it plainly, "Beauty doesn't get you far when the roles stop coming." Then came the fire. On April 10, 1965, Linda was visiting her former secretary's home in Glenview, Illinois. That night, they watched one of her old films on TV. Nostalgic, maybe hopeful, maybe sad. Later that night, a fire broke out. Trapped upstairs with the secretary's teenage daughter, Linda pushed the girl out a window, saving her life. Linda, however, couldn't escape. She was burned over 90% of her body. She died the next day. Her sister only identified her by her dental records. The contrast was chilling. Just hours earlier, her old Hollywood beauty had flickered on the screen. And now she was gone, unrecognizable. Life magazine published a side-by-side spread. Linda in her prime, glowing in 1944. Next to the tragic news of her death, her face remained untouched by time, but not by fire. She didn't grow old in the public eye. She was stolen in a flash by something faster than time itself. Linda Darnell's beauty didn't fade, it burned, and in doing so became one of the most haunting final acts in Hollywood history. Number 2. Susan Peters, a gunshot that froze her future. She was just getting started. In 1942, Susan Peters stunned Hollywood with her performance in Random Harvest, a role that earned her an Oscar nomination and set her up for superstardom. She had everything: talent, beauty, poise. MGM was ready to make her a household name. But then, in an instant, it all ended. In January 1945, on a duck hunting trip with her husband and friends, a rifle accidentally discharged. The bullet struck Susan in the spine. She was just 23 years old. The damage was permanent. Paralyzed from the waist down. Doctors were blunt. She would never walk again. And just like that, her future, her life, was frozen. Hollywood didn't know what to do with her anymore. She tried to come back, starring in The Sign of the Ram, playing a woman in a wheelchair, but audiences weren't ready, and the industry wasn't willing. Behind the camera, Susan was in pain, physically and emotionally. Her once bright face grew gaunt, her eyes dulled by chronic exhaustion and quiet heartbreak. Press photos from her later years show a woman drained, a ghost of the vibrant ingenue she'd once been. Her cheekbones sharpened, her expression stiffened. Not from aging, but from malnutrition, anemia, and depression. In a 1951 interview, she said, "I feel like I died that day." And that wasn't just metaphor. That same year, she did die. She passed away weighing just 80 pounds, a woman worn down by grief, by pain, and by a town that had no place for her anymore. Susan Peters didn't fade away. Her beauty, her promise, her life, it was all stolen by a single moment, one shot, 1 second, and the world forgot what it had almost seen. Number 1. Betty Hutton, bright lights to broomsticks. She was lightning in a bottle, loud, wild, funny, unforgettable. In the 1940s, Betty Hutton burst onto the screen like a human firework, singing, dancing, laughing her way into America's heart. Hits like Annie Get Your Gun and The Miracle of Morgan's Creek made her a box office sensation. But what audiences didn't see was that Betty was already fighting to stay afloat. Behind the dazzling smile was a woman consumed by insecurity, mental health struggles, and a growing dependence on prescription drugs. She feared abandonment. She feared aging. But most of all, she feared being forgotten. By the early 1950s, her career collapsed almost overnight. Studios labeled her unstable. The offers stopped. The fans moved on. The pills became a crutch. The anxiety, unbearable. By the 1960s, the once radiant Betty Hutton was living in obscurity, broke and battling suicidal thoughts. And then came the headline that shocked the nation. Betty Hutton, one of Hollywood's brightest stars, was discovered working as a house cleaner in a Catholic rectory in Rhode Island. No cameras, no applause. Just Betty, in silence, scrubbing floors under an assumed name. She had converted to Catholicism and was seeking redemption, not in lights, but in faith. She made a brief, fragile appearance in the 1970s on The Phil Donahue Show. Audiences were stunned. Gone was the bubbly blonde. In her place, a pale, trembling woman with sunken cheeks, haunted eyes, and a voice cracking under the weight of time. In her autobiography, she wrote one line that says it all. "They loved me when I was beautiful. When I wasn't, no one even asked if I was alive." Betty Hutton died in 2007. Not in scandal, not in disgrace, but in quiet, far from the sound stages that once echoed with her laughter. The world remembers the star who danced and sang across the silver screen, but few remember the woman who lived in the shadows of her own spotlight. These women weren't just beautiful, they were brilliant, but in a town that worships youth and perfection, they were forgotten the moment they couldn't keep up. If this story moved you, share it. Let the world remember the real faces of Hollywood, beyond the glamour. Like, comment, subscribe. New deep dives every week only here on Classic Hollywood.